A quick heads up before today's episode. On the 14th of February, I'm going to be running a brand new live workshop. It's called Attract Hot Leads with Low Ticket Offers. I'm talking about those sexy little mini offers you've been seeing everywhere on the internet, how this might fit into your business strategy, and how to make sure that if you're going to go to the effort of creating low ticket offers, they are doing their job in your business and marketing strategy. This workshop is strategic and practical, and you can register now at tashcorbin.com/low ticket. Quick question. Have you noticed how extreme business and marketing and strategy advice can be on the internet at times? I remember when I first started my business, there seemed to be these extremes of you always have to do X or you should never do X. And it really hasn't changed much over the years. There's one strategy in particular that I still see people advising either it's the best way to do things or it's something you should never be doing in your business. And it seems to be the one where people are either all for it or completely against it. And that is doing single sessions as a service-based business provider, as someone who works in a coaching or mentoring space. Either the advice is never do single sessions or you should always offer single sessions. And so in today's episode of the Heart Centre Business Podcast, I want to break down the strategic role of single sessions and why it's never an all or nothing, why there's always a place where we can find a reason to be doing single sessions, but there are also some reasons and some times where you might decide not to offer them. So that's what we're diving into today. This is episode number 459, which means you can find all the relevant links and the show notes for today's episode over at tashcorbin.com/459. Let's dive in and unpack the single session as a lead generation strategy. Hello, I'm Tash Corbin, a business strategist and mentor based on the Sunshine Coast in Australia. The mission of this podcast is to help heart-centered entrepreneurs to make more money and in doing so, change the world for the better. This podcast was recorded on the lands of the Gubbi Gubbi and Jinnaburra people. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. As I said in the intro, it seems that there are so many extremes when it comes to business advice, and in particular, the extremes around single sessions. When I first started my business, I worked with two separate coaches who recommended giving away at least 50 free coaching sessions before charging for coaching. I also saw so many coaches and mentors and strategists saying you should never give away free sessions. You should never even offer single sessions, even if people pay you for them. You should certainly not give your sessions away for free because you're completely devaluing the transformation that you facilitate. No, you should never do this. And they would have some very logical reasons for their perspective and their approach and their reasons for giving that advice. But the thing I want you to remember is that if a business strategist or marketer ever says the only way to achieve something is X, what they are really saying is the only way I know how to help you achieve this is X, right? So if they say the only way to get hot leads is to make sure that they are paying you from the outset, that means the only way they know how to help you get hot leads is to ensure that people are paying from the outset. It's not that it's the only way you could be able to do it. So I always remind myself of that whenever I see this kind of extreme language in people's advice, and especially when it comes to marketing. And personally, as a business strategist myself, I've never actually met a business strategy that I couldn't make work. And maybe there is one that I'll come across in some form at some point. But in the 11 years that I've been doing this as a business mentor in my own business, and in the preceding 5 years as a business consultant and coach, I've never actually met a strategy that I couldn't make work. The key is to find your best approach. It's also important to recognize that the more parameters and the more strict the parameters are that you put around your strategy and what you are willing to do or what you're willing to experiment with, then the more that you'll need to be cognizant that it may take a little longer for your strategy to work, or it may take a little more investment for you to get to that tipping point. So, for example, there are some people who've said to me, I will never spend money on Facebook ads. I will never spend money on advertising my business. It needs to all be organic. And so we just need to be mindful then that if we do get your messaging and your content and your marketing strategy working well and it's converting clients, if investing in ads to scale up the growth of that business is not available to us, then we're going to need to put more time and energy into finessing the content strategy. And the truth is that it will take a little longer for that audience growth to happen if we can't invest in fast tracking that audience growth and fast tracking that reach. Of course, there are other organic marketing strategies that can blow up your reach and get you in front of a lot more people more quickly. But a lot of times that takes time and energy, and it takes, being willing to kind of go and pound the pavement a little. So you might be a guest on someone's podcast and get yourself a really amazing new surge of reach and surge of followers. But it might take 20 or 30 podcasts before you stumble across being a guest on the one that does the job for you. On the other hand, if you don't have as much time or energy to put into finessing your content and your messaging, then it either may take a little bit more time for that business to grow, or we need to invest a little more, a little sooner to give that opportunity for that messaging to be tested at scale in front of reaching more and more people because the organic strategies aren't there. I've also worked with people who won't be on certain social media platforms, or I've worked with people who refuse to do video, or I've worked with people who aren't great at writing for their business. And so we've needed to lean into other strategies and other mediums for them to focus their energy and attention on. But then we have also found ways to really identify, well, what's going to be the missing piece from the strategy? What is the opportunity cost or the risk of not having that as part of the business strategy? And therefore, how can we counter that and ensure that it doesn't mean the business consistently stays stagnant and it doesn't actually get that growth and traction? In addition, I often talk about how I recommend focusing on selling one-to-one and delivering one-to-one in the early stages of business. And I talk about all of the reasons why I recommend that. And I can point to a previous podcast episode where I talk about working with people one-to-one, but also learning how to sell one-to-one first before working at scale. But there are some people for whom that is just not something that they're open to doing. It's not something that they're willing to do. That's absolutely fine, but we just need to be mindful of what are the things that you'll then miss out on and need to access or sort out in other ways if you do not sell one-to-one, deliver one-to-one. I've got a podcast episode called Can You Just Skip one-to-one and go straight into selling one-to-many? The answer is yes, but there are 7 things that you get from selling one-to-one and delivering one-to-one that you just need to account for. So that's more my take on it, right? I've never met a strategy that I cannot make work. I've never met a set of parameters that I haven't been able to create a strategy around, but we do just need to be mindful that sometimes that means things are going to need a bit more time invested, or things are going to need a bit more money invested, or you're going to need to hire and onboard a support person in your business a little sooner if you didn't have certain parameters. That's totally fine, right? As long as we're making an informed decision. But when I first started my business, giving out free coaching sessions was such a hot strategy. It was the most consistent and in some cases the only marketing advice that was given as part of coaching qualifications. So I had several clients and friends who did a coaching qualification with industry-leading coach training and coach accreditation, and that was their business growth module of their coach training. How to get clients, go and give away free sessions. It was the only advice given in many cases. And in other coach training, it was given as a core part of the strategy. Give away lots and lots of free coaching sessions. It builds your skills as a coach, of course, but in doing so, you're also opening up for more referrals. You're also opening up for those people to want to keep working with you. And it's good to hear what people are looking for and get feedback and refine your messaging, those sorts of things. So giving away free coaching sessions was a really hot strategy. A big example of this was in 2013, when I started my business, there was a very popular Australian coach, and he had a one-to-one coaching package where he guaranteed he would continue giving you a coaching session every 2 weeks in his $15,000 package until you made $100,000, so long as you do the work. As long as you do the work assigned to you, you will continue to receive fortnightly one-on-one coaching from him every single fortnight for this $15,000 package. So it was advertised as a $15,000 business coaching package for people starting up as business coaches or as coaches. And it was $15,000, but you got unlimited coaching until you made $100,000. But the caveat was so long as you did the work. And one of those requirements was that in the first month of working with him, you had to give away 50 free coaching sessions. And if in the first month you did that and you didn't get those sales and you didn't get the leads coming in and you weren't converting those people into paying clients, then you had to do 50 free coaching sessions every single month to continue getting your one-on-one coaching from him included in your package. So there are a lot of problems with that offer. Number one, it wasn't actually disclosed upfront what the work was. And so therefore a lot of marginalized people who still had full-time jobs, single mums, mums trying to do this as a side hustle, didn't actually have the capacity to do those 50 free sessions. Also, they didn't necessarily have the audience or the network that someone who had previously worked in corporate roles might have had to be able to find people to give those 50 free coaching sessions to. But one last little juicy nugget of gossip, because, I love a little bit of business gossip, is that I actually worked with someone who had been cancelled out of this coaching program after just 2 months. And it was someone who had a part-time job and they just didn't have the audience or the network to get people to do these free coaching sessions with them. But they also then found out, because a lot of the people that they gave free coaching sessions to were their friends and their family, that as part of their homework and proving they had done the work of giving away the free coaching sessions, they actually had to submit to this coach, and his name is Ryan. They had to submit to this coach a spreadsheet of every person they'd done a free coaching session with, their email address and phone number, what they had done their coaching on, and what was the person's reason for not buying their coaching package at the end of the free session. And it was undisclosed to buyers that what Ryan would do is, once he got that spreadsheet, he would actually give it to his sales team, who then, if anyone was getting coached around growing a business, and that's what their first session was around, or they gave any indication that they were interested in starting a business, Ryan's sales team would actually contact that person and then put the hard sell on them and offer them a free coaching session because, of course, his client was not good enough at doing the coaching. And so he would actually swoop in with his sales team and then sell to those people. So it was a completely dodgy, terrible, terrible, terrible scheme. And Ryan then, after flashing his Mercedes and, all of his flashy living arrangements across the internet for 3 years, gave it all up and then moved to Bali or something random and started doing meditation retreats or something. But anyway, it used to make me giggle and also fume at the incongruence of this guy's messaging. But he was a big reason, particularly in Australian circles of business startups, why people felt that they needed to give away a lot of free sessions as part of their marketing strategy. So because of that, there was this sort of either you were in this Ryan's camp, you're in the coaching qualifications camp of, yes, you have to give away all of these sessions for free, or it was like you either had to be that or the extreme opposite, which was never give away free sessions. In fact, never allow anyone to just buy one session from you, because working with you should be a deeply transformative experience. And if you don't have the opportunity to work with someone for at least 12 sessions over 12 weeks and you're not being paid at least $5,000 for those 12 sessions over 12 weeks, then you're just devaluing yourself, babe. And it was like one or the other. And I'm not saying that either of those approaches is wrong or there's anything wrong with it. But what I have a problem with is that this is being given as blanket advice to everyone. And it often means that people aren't able to create a strategy, especially in the early stages of their business, that actually aligns with them and their strengths, but also aligns with their niche and their market. So something that happened for me when I first started my business, I did work with a business coach, and it was just a one-day type VIP experience. And that person did give me advice to go and do free single sessions with people. But I found that I would jump into Facebook groups. I would talk about doing these free one-off sessions on my own social media and with my own networks. I was from a corporate background, so I was mostly active on LinkedIn before I started my business. So I advertised it on LinkedIn. I even reached out to a few friends who had businesses or that I knew were wanting to start businesses and offered to do free one-on-one single sessions with them. And that was great. And I definitely got a lot of insights from the sessions that I did get booked in and that did come and show up and work with me. But I found it really hard to get people to book them in with me. I couldn't give away free coaching sessions. And part of the reason for that, I think, is because I was focused on marketing to people starting a business, and people starting a business had seen this as advice. And so they were very wary of people who were giving out free coaching sessions. And I think a lot of people starting businesses also had done their fair share of free coaching sessions with other coaches and other business mentors. And it wasn't really helpful to them. It didn't really move them forward. And then they got the hard sell at the end. And so therefore, they were quite wary of taking up those free sessions. I also found that a lot of people who took up those free sessions didn't show up to them. So I had all of the reminder emails automated and I had all of that set up very well. I even had like an onboarding questionnaire that I asked people when they booked their free one-on-one session with me. But about 30 to 40% of people who booked the session in just didn't show up. They just didn't show up. And so I found that a bit frustrating. But what I did was if I had a no-show, I'd use that time to create content to go and find more people who wanted to work with me. And I would use the onboarding form questions that they answered as information around like what was it that they were looking to work on, what were they stuck with. So I just created content to help that person, even though they didn't show up to their free session. And that was really good content. It worked very effectively to then get more inquiries and get more conversations happening online. But then I also had a few times where it was a really awkward session because people would say to me at the start of their free session, look, I've done 8 of these free sessions before and none of them were very good. And they all did the hard upsell at the end. And I just want to start out by saying, I'm not going to tell you how much money I'm making so far because I know you're going to use that to try and sell me something, and I'm not interested in buying anything from you. I'm just here for the free coaching. Or something to that extent. I had people say to me, look, I know you're probably going to try and upsell me at the end, but I'm not interested in the upsell. So just skip that part, please. And so it felt really awkward, even though I never did an upsell unless I'd qualified and asked questions and someone was actually interested in hearing about how they could work with me further. But I understand when you've been through that process with a bunch of people who underdeliver in the free session, then go hard on the sales pitch, that you can be a bit standoffish. And I didn't like the awkwardness of the way that those sessions started out. And the final reason why I ended up stopping my free sessions was it felt like the energy exchange was just a little bit off, that like I was really bringing my best to the table, and those people who booked those free sessions, a good portion of them never implemented what we discussed. Like I would follow up with messages and emails, and sometimes I'd follow up with questions and how did you go? And they're like, oh, no, I didn't actually do what we'd said. But I've heard these days it's much better to do a 5-day challenge than to do a webinar. So can you do another session with me and talk to me about how to do that? And so it just felt like the relationship kind of started on this kind of weird energy exchange vibe. And so that wasn't everyone. Absolutely not. There were definitely people who I did free sessions with. They were absolutely like the most amazing people. Some of them ended up turning into clients. Some of them couldn't afford to work with me at that point in time, but they went and did reviews on Facebook groups for me, and they recommended me whenever other people in the group asked about business coaches. So I'm not saying, and I'm definitely not buying into that rhetoric, that if someone gets something for free, they don't value it, because that would be in direct contradiction with a previous podcast episode that I recorded around, do people really only value stuff that they've paid for? I'll link to that in the show notes as well. But for me, I just felt like when I offered those free sessions, it felt like it was a lot of work, and for my niche and for the level of experience I had in business coaching and business consulting, I just didn't feel like it was the right fit for my strategy. But I really wanted to work with as many people as possible. I had set myself, after a few weeks in business, I set myself this mission that every week I wanted to work with 5 paying clients, but I didn't care how much they paid me. Because I knew that actually in doing those free sessions, I could see I was learning so much about my audience. I was learning so much about niching. I was learning so much about what my messaging needed to be about. I got so much inspiration for blog posts and videos I wanted to create and content I wanted to create out of doing those free sessions. So I didn't want to stop doing single sessions. I saw it as a very, very powerful way for me to up-level my confidence in working direct with business owners rather than through a consulting firm. I also saw it, as I said, as a really juicy insight into my audience and into my market and what I needed to do and what people were asking about and what problems people had. So what I decided to do was experiment with offering single sessions, but offering them at a lower price than my regular rate. So when I started my business, I really wanted to be earning $97 an hour for one-on-one business coaching. Now, the reason for that is many and varied. Part of it was a little bit of comparisonitis and what other people were charging, but also it felt like it was a fair energy exchange given that I just started my business. So in my previous consulting firm, I was charged out at $500 an hour. And so I felt like $97 an hour was a good price for me. And it also just felt like it was something that for the market that I was in was fairly comparable. And it felt like I would be like really happy with that. So what I decided to do when I first started offering paid single sessions was I combined a free first session with a paid second session, but I did them as a 2-hour session. So I offered 2-hour mentoring sessions for $97. So that way it felt like I was still getting $97 an hour because I'd previously been giving away free first sessions for an hour session for free. So it felt like it was like a really good kind of middle ground because I had also seen a lot of marketers and mentors say, don't give away your work for free. Don't discount your prices because then you're devaluing yourself. And I did have some money mindset stuff around that. I was a bit worried about undervaluing myself and all those sorts of things. So I started offering my 2-hour one-to-one coaching sessions for $97. Now, it wasn't for new customers only. It was for anyone who booked them in. But when I first started offering them, I would just offer 3 sessions for the week. So there were a couple of Facebook groups I was very active in. And so I'd go in and I'd do the offer on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, which were the 2 market promo days in the different groups. And I would say, I'm doing 3 people. I'll do a 2-hour business mentoring session for $97. And at first I would advertise it as, and we can work on whatever you want. We could do blogs, we can do your website, we can do your messaging, we can do your offers, whatever you want. And people didn't want them. And so then I thought, well, if I'm only offering 3, I'm happy to do it at a discount. So I went and did 2 hours for $47, but the messaging was still vague and no one wanted it. And then I was like, wow, right? Like it's not actually a pricing issue here. What the issue is that people don't see this as valuable. They don't actually have clarity around exactly what they're going to get out of working with me for 2 hours. 2 hours is a lot of time to give me for something that's very vague. So instead, I started looking at what did I work with people on in some of the free sessions I'd given away. And I created these 2-hour single session offers that were specific to something I'd done with someone. So I had some tangible numbers I could talk about. For example, I had done a 1-hour session with someone where we had gone through their blogging plan and we had crafted a structure to their blogs that they could reuse over and over again. We had crafted an idea for an opt-in that could get people from the blog over to their mailing list. And then we had come up with 12 blog titles and some key dot points for each one in our hour together. So I offered that as a 2-hour single session with me. And at first I still offered it at $47 because I was still experimenting with my messaging. I wanted to eliminate price as one of the reasons why people weren't buying from me. And the first time I offered it, in 2 hours, I'll help you with your structure of your blog, an opt-in for your blog, and then at least 12 weeks worth of blog titles and key points. And it sold out. 3 spots at $47. And I really, really got excited. And so then I started experimenting with different versions. I'd helped someone with crafting a webinar, so I made that offer. I helped someone with the copy for their website, so I did that as an offer. I helped someone write a bunch of different offers to share into Facebook groups, so I did that as an offer. And as I started selling them more and more consistently, I started to put the price up again. So once I'd sold it out at $47, then I did it at $97, and then I did it at $197. And once I got to $197, I was like, well, I would be happy with someone booking this in at any time. So I put it up on my website that people could book a 2-hour one-on-one with me for $197 at any time, whenever they wanted. But it was still really important to me that I spoke to and worked with at least 5 people a week. You need to remember that I started my business full time. Like I quit my job and started my business. And so I had time. Time was something that I had in droves. I was very, very time rich. And so I could see that doing these single sessions was really informative. Also, a bunch of them had converted into VIP packages and working with me further. And I also had a lot of people repeat buy those single sessions. And so I was becoming quite well known in different circles. And I just wanted to keep up this momentum. I was really hungry and curious about what people wanted and why people decided not to work with me further versus did work with me further, and what made someone my ideal client versus not quite ready to be a client, but they, really wanted to do the single session with me. So I could refine the way I offered the single session so it more attracted people who were more likely to then upgrade to a VIP package over 6 months and all sorts of different things. And so what I did was I made the single sessions available at any time at $197, but if I hadn't sold 5 of them by Wednesday afternoon, I would go and offer the remainder at a discounted rate, but they had to be done on Friday at certain times. So I would go into the Facebook group that had the offer day on Wednesdays, and I would say, I've got a spot at 10 a.m., 1 p.m., and 4 p.m. for anyone who wants to do 2-hour VIP mentoring with me. And I would focus it on a certain area, like to organize your webinar or whatever was the most popular at that point in time. And I would do it for $97. Normally $197, but if you are able to do it at this exact time, then you can have it for $97. And they sold out. And it was like, oh, interesting. So what I did by experimenting with this strategy that no one told me to do, by the way, this was just me feeling a bit off about doing so many free sessions and having people not turn up and not being able to give them away. So what I really did was actually create one of the most effective lead generation strategies I have ever had the honor of implementing in my own business and teaching to other people ever. Because after 6 months of doing 2-hour single sessions and experimenting with all these strategies, I went back and looked at my numbers, and more than 50% of people who purchased a single 2-hour session with me went on to purchase something else, whether that be another 2-hour session at full price or a VIP package for 6 months or a 1-month package or whatever it might be. So more than 50% of the people who purchased one of these 2-hour single sessions with me went on to buy something else. So it had a 50% plus conversion rate into further work together. And it turned out to be absolutely brilliant for my business. Single sessions as a lead generating strategy, but rather than doing them for free, doing them paid. And as they became more and more popular and I got better and better at not just selling them, but also delivering them, I consistently increased the prices. So I started my business in June of 2013. And by January 2013, a 2-hour single session with me was $495. So I had gone from $97 to $197 to $247, and then I went straight up to $497 because I just kept selling them out, and I just ended up having more and more and more people wanting to work with me. And so I needed to reduce demand by increasing the price pretty significantly. I should also say that the people who did those single sessions with me, whether they did them at a deep discount or whether they did them at full price, when they converted into further work with me, I only counted people who converted into further work at full price. So they either booked another at least 2-hour single session at the full price from my website, or they booked a VIP package with me, and that was at my full price. So my VIP package from the outset was $1,000 for a 1-month intensive, which was 4 sessions of varying lengths. And then my 6-month package, which was 12 sessions, was $2,500. So this is how very quickly when I started my business, I got myself to the point where I had a $20,000 month in December of 2013. I was doing a big price increase in December, and so I had a lot of people purchase a bunch of sessions with me and packages with me to lock in the existing price before the price of the 2-hour sessions doubled and the price of my packages went up accordingly as well. Now, remember at the start of this podcast episode how I said there are a lot of extremes in business and marketing advice? I want you to listen to this story without going to the extreme of this is the best way to do it. Because over the last 11 years, almost 12 years now, I have worked with thousands and thousands of business owners. And I can tell you that not every business owner and not every niche is the right fit for this kind of strategy, but it can be a very, very effective one. There are some people I've worked with where actually offering free sessions works better for their niche. There are some people that I've worked with where offering single sessions doesn't really work for their modality. And so it needs to be 3 sessions. It needs to be a 1-month commitment at the start. There are people I've worked with where doing single sessions one-on-one didn't work with the hours of work that they were able to offer. And so we had to find other ways to do this. But this strategy of doing low cost or discounted single sessions in particular as a lead generating strategy, and being clear that it is a lead generating strategy, has worked for so many people that I've mentored over the years. And so that's why I wanted to kind of dissect that strategy for you. So a few key notes for you on the single session as a lead magnet and making sure that this strategy works for you. So the first one is that you really do need to deliver in that single session. It's not enough to offer the single session, do a lackluster job, the person walks away feeling confused, they don't really get very excited about potentially working with you any further, and you haven't really delivered on your promise. That's not going to work as a lead generating strategy. You need to deliver. And I think that this isn't spoken about nearly enough in marketing advice and in marketing and business strategy circles. Something that I'm very passionate about is encouraging and reminding people that investing time, money, energy, and practice into developing your craft and developing your skill set is just as critical as developing your skill set in marketing and sales to grow a sustainable, consistently scaling business. So you do need to deliver on your promise, and you do need to deliver in those single sessions. Now, that being said, I don't want your fear of not being able to deliver to stop you from doing this. So if you're worried that you're not necessarily going to be able to deliver in a single session, or you're worried that, well, what if I'm not good enough? Or do I really have the skills? If you've got that little crisis of confidence coming up for you, I want you to remember that you can always come up with a way to sort that out. So this is something that happens sometimes in the Takeoff program, because we do use single sessions as one of the strategies that we experiment with and people try out as a way of generating leads. And there are people who've come to a Takeoff call or come into the group and said, oh my gosh, I totally flubbed it. Like, I did a terrible job of that first session. The person really sounded like they weren't satisfied, or, at least that's the vibe that I had. And I'm really worried that I have under-delivered and that, I've done a bad job, and I just really want to make it up to them. I really want to fix it. Well, you can always reach out and say that. You can say, look, I just wanted to reach out because I don't think I really delivered my best work in your session. And I'm really, really excited for what we got started on working on. And I really want to see you succeed at this. So I'd love to reach out and offer you another free session so that we can go a little deeper, so that we can take a little further, so that we can finish what we started. That's totally available to you. That's totally available to you. Of course, you do want to see that you are improving your skills over time. And if you really don't have that skill set, or if you're really struggling to deliver, then that to me says that it could be a good idea to invest in some mentorship, some guidance. Some modalities you can do, like supervised sessions and supervised mentorship. That's a really great way to get feedback on the way that you deliver if you're not necessarily helping people to get those results. There is no shame in realizing that you may not necessarily have the skill set to the level that you need in order to have a successful business. That's really good self-awareness. And I think that should be rewarded. And I think that you should really acknowledge and congratulate yourself and be kind to yourself, and then give yourself what you need to build that skill set. Give yourself what you need to be able to build that confidence. All right, so number 1, you definitely need to deliver in that single session. Number 2, discounts are fine. Discounts are absolutely fine. There's so much out there about like you should never discount your services and da-da-da. Would you rather sit twiddling your thumbs for 4 weeks with no leads and no clients, but you stuck to your guns and never offered a discount? Or would you rather take price out of the equation so you can get to the real work of actually finessing your message? It wasn't until I discounted my 2-hour single session that I realized the problem wasn't the price. The problem was it was too vague and people didn't see the value in it. So for me, having a discounted single session offer was actually the perfect way to ensure that I was staying focused on fixing the thing that needs fixed. And the thing that needed fixed in the early days was my messaging, the specificity and tangibility of the offer that I was making. So I am not opposed to discounts at all when it comes to using single sessions, especially as a lead generating strategy, right? A lot of coaches and mentors do the math on single sessions as though that's all you're ever going to sell. And of course, doing single sessions of 2 hours for $49, that's less than minimum wage once I pay tax and my expenses, right? That's not a sustainable business if I only ever made $47 for every 2 hours that I worked with clients in my business. But that was never the final part of the equation. It was never done as, this is my business model. I do 2-hour sessions for $47. It was a lead generation strategy. It was a part of my marketing strategy. And yes, there were some people who only ever did discounted single sessions with me, but would I be angry at them or resentful of them in the landscape of everything else that it generated for my business? No. And often the people who didn't end up taking any further sessions or working with me further were my biggest raving fans all over the internet. And they were tagging me and saying, you should do a session with Tash Corbin. Oh my goodness. Like, we got so much done in 2 hours. I cannot believe how valuable her session was. I'll be implementing her advice for the next 3 months. We did 3 months of blog strategy and it's spectacular and I'm so excited to implement it. So I think that that can also be something where maybe a little bit of judgment comes or people start to get a bit resentful, like, oh, this person has bought 6 discounted single sessions with me. How very dare they? They've never upsold. Like, there's clearly something wrong with them or there's something wrong with me that they never end up graduating into doing something further with me. They're always buying my single sessions. Now, number one, if there is an issue with qualifying and upselling, yes, sure, we might identify that, but it's often spoken about in hyperbole, like everyone just keeps booking my discounted single sessions and no one ever upsells into my packages when that's not really true. And this is where we want to be that student of the human. We want to be really curious. We want to pay attention to what am I learning here and what messaging did these people come in on and how well did I qualify at the end of the session to understand what their next steps were, what their next barrier was, and their level of readiness to get help with that next step or that next barrier. Often it's a sales skill issue, or it's just that you've got a few people who keep booking discounted sessions with you and you are a little resentful that they've taken the space of someone else. And at the end of the day, if I had 5 single sessions available a week and 3 of them were taken by repeat clients and 2 of them were new leads, I didn't have a problem with that. I didn't. And if I had those single sessions selling out over and over and over again, people were seeing that. People were seeing me update my post and say, all sessions taken, keep an eye out for next week's. And so they could see I was an in-demand mentor and an in-demand coach. And when I started to feel like it was selling out really quickly and it wasn't giving new leads ample opportunity to even see the offer, I just put the price up a little. And I put it up a little more, and then I put it up a little more. And so by making sure I got the messaging really nailed and bedded in and keeping the price point low at first, I was very confident when I then increased the price that it wasn't going to significantly affect demand. And that's where we need to be strategic about these things. And that's where blanket advice is never going to be able to help through those early stages, because we need to be able to interrogate what the data is telling you, what the insights are that you're gaining from the sessions you are selling and from the people you are working with. What information are we gaining from the sales part of the final part of the conversation? And to what extent are you qualifying? What questions were you asking? Where did it kind of fizzle out? What did they sort of come to as their reason for not working any further together? And often it's just that the sales strategy wasn't necessarily executed effectively. We didn't ask enough questions at the end of the session. We weren't talking enough about the future and clarifying what their future plans were at the end of the session. Or it just needed some follow-up in a few weeks once they'd done their homework and they'd implemented what they'd work with you on the first session. That's fine. That's absolutely spectacular. Most of my conversion from single session into working together further didn't happen. Like, they didn't pay there live on the call. They paid me a couple of days later. They requested an invoice 2 weeks down the track when I followed up with them. They said, yep, I'm ready for the big package when I followed up the third time, right? This is where there's no hard and fast rule. There's no one approach. It's about really dissecting what's working, where do people get caught up in that process, and is the problem that you're just attracting a bunch of discount chasers, or is the problem that you're not very good at bridging people from working with you in a single session to understanding the value proposition of your bigger package? And if it's the second part, then let's work on the second part. So discounts are absolutely fine. But that brings me to tip number 3, which is you need to interrogate consistently. Is this single session as a lead magnet doing its job? Its job is to be a lead magnet. It's to attract hot leads. So if it's not attracting hot leads, it's not doing its job. Now, that might mean that we need to craft the messaging of it differently, or we need to structure your delivery differently, or we need to do your bridging into the sales conversation part of it better and differently. It doesn't mean that the strategy of offering low-cost single sessions is like completely devoid of value in your business. Often it's in the finessing and the nuance of the application of the strategy that we need to make some changes. But if it's not doing its job, you need to make some changes. I would just say don't throw out the entire model because the first 2 people you did low-cost single sessions with weren't a fit. That's not what that data is telling me. It's not telling me that the strategy or the model itself is not a fit. Number 4 is pay attention to your mindset, especially if you latch on to certain beliefs about what is best. So there are a lot of people out there sharing throwaway lines and repetitive content that helps us to reaffirm our existing belief about who we are and our place in the world. And I'm going to give you a few examples of this. The first one is that being paid for working with you is a form of energetic exchange, and therefore if you're giving away single sessions, that energy exchange is unfair and it's imbalanced, and therefore you are energetically draining without any energetic return on investment. I don't actually think that's true. If you are building your confidence in delivery, if you're building your confidence in your marketing, if you're getting messaging insights and content insights, the energy exchange is there. It may be imbalanced, but it's there. And especially for people who are in the very early stages of their business and they would give anything to have leads, conversations with potential clients, insights as to what would work in terms of messaging and marketing, understanding how people get stuck, where people are at. If that is something that you don't have, that is an asset. Though those insights are assets, they are vital to the future growth and sustainability of your business. So if someone is providing you with those in return for you giving them a single session for free, there's a very fair energetic exchange going on there. So that is a big one. Another one is that if you consistently share things at a discount, then you train people to wait for the sale and wait for things to be on special. Now, I totally understand that in some cases we can create that expectation with our audience, but that doesn't mean that all discounts do that. And you'll notice when I talked about the way that I did my discounted single sessions was that it was limited spaces. So I would often have my limited space single sessions go up on a Tuesday and they would all sell out straight away. And I would have someone reach out and message me and say, oh, I was hoping to grab one of the discounted sessions to work with you this week, but I missed out. So I'm just going to book in a full price. Can I do something with you on Thursday? Right? So to me, that says like, yes, people did go and wait for the sale, but they valued the work with me so much that when they couldn't get the sale price because it was limited spaces, they were willing to pay full price. Other people would say, oh, I just missed out. I'll wait till next week, right? That's totally fine. That I didn't have a problem with that. And the reason was that I still had a very sufficient flow of hot leads coming into my business every single week. And so I really had as many leads as I could deal with anyway at that point in time. And a lot of people who weren't willing to wait for the discount and like go in and do all of that, they'd rather just pay full price and be able to book in whenever they wanted. And so especially as I became more and more in hot demand and then the discounted sessions were only available on Fridays at certain times, people would then more and more book in at the full price because they wanted to book in with me on a Monday or they wanted to book in with me on a Wednesday afternoon. And so there are other parameters that you can use to create that desire for people to work with you at full price and to ensure that you're not just training everyone to wait for the sale. Yeah. And if you see that messaging, that if you are constantly offering discounts, then you're just training people to wait for the sale, and it really hits you in the heart space, and you're like, oh my God, that is so true. Everybody is taking advantage of me, and all I'm doing is attracting people who are chasing bargains. Then think about how you were relieved to see something that reflected your existing belief about your place in the world. Think about how that message actually got you whinging about your audience. And is that the energetic response you want to have to that kind of message? For me, if I see something like that, I'm like, oh, that is so true. Everybody is just out to get me, right? If that's my response, then that is not the message that I was there to receive that day. In fact, what I need to interrogate is why I was so willing to jump aboard that train. Why I was so willing to like literally get angry about my audience and get resentful of my clients in reading that message. And that's a little bit of tough love from Tash there, right? A little bit of tough mindset love there. So really pay attention to your mindset when you find yourself latching on to certain beliefs about what is best and why. And often it's presented in a way that is saying, that like this is what's best and why because you're attracting the wrong kind of person, or it is saying something about the message or the vibe that you're putting out is attracting the wrong caliber of person. And so what it's actually doing is saying, oh, it's not your fault. It's just that your strategy is attracting like deadbeats, which is not true. It's not true. Marketers share those kinds of messages and that kind of rhetoric to stroke your ego. That's actually part of their strategy. So just pay attention to your mindset on that one. And again, I'll link to my previous episode about whether people only value something that they've paid for with the show notes of today's episode. Okay, so we've done a lot of talking and I got real sassy towards the end of this podcast episode, but hopefully you can see that single sessions can be a very effective lead generation strategy, especially in the early stages of your business. But I also want to say to anyone out there who's been doing this for years, I still have single sessions as a lead generation strategy from time to time. It's still very effective for me. It still helps me to really stay in touch with my audience and the types of things people are focused on, and also the types of strategies that people get a little bit derailed by in their business as well, so that I can create podcasts like this to help, guide and unpack certain strategies that are, of the moment or so hot right now. So hopefully this has been really helpful for you. And if you do want to really dive deeper into the sales skills part of what I'm talking about here, structuring sales conversations and also consent-based sales, I have a super juicy offer for you today. And that is with the show notes of today's episode over at tashcorbin.com/459. You'll find a link to grab my Skyrocket Sales course. It is a self-study course that goes through how to really improve your sales skills and make more sales with some very tangible strategies, and do it all in a consent-based way. So I'll have the link to that with the show notes of today's episode, with a cheeky little coupon code that will get you the Skyrocket Sales program at the current cheapest available price. No matter what time you are listening to this podcast, whether you're listening to it the day it came out or 6 years from now, if you go to tashcorbin.com/459, I guarantee that the coupon code that you find with the show notes of today's episode will always get you the lowest available price for that course. So make sure you go and check it all out. I'll have the links to those other podcasts there, as well as the coupon code and link to Skyrocket Sales. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Heart Centered Business Podcast. And until next time, superstar, I cannot wait to see you shine. Bye for now.